Good day and welcome to Big Bad Tech. I'm your instructor, Jim Pytel, and today's topic of discussion is DC current sources. Our objective is to introduce DC current sources and learn how to analyze circuits incorporating DC current sources. Let me begin this lecture by stating that there is no such thing as a current source. There are, however, variable voltage sources that increase or decrease output voltage in order to keep current at some preset constant value. This is a real-world current source. We'll return to this definition in a moment after I introduce the ideal entity known as a current source. This is the schematic symbol for a current source. It is a two-terminal device and induces conventional current through a circuit in the direction indicated by the arrow. This is a mathematically perfect entity and not necessarily constrained by reality. In theory, a 2 amp current source should push 2 amps through a 20 ohm resistor just as easily as it would push 2 amps through a 20 mega ohm resistor. But the real world says differently. We'll discuss limitations of real-world current sources in a moment, but for now, we'll just assume the current source behaves exactly like it's supposed to. Regardless of the applied load, a current source pushes the required amount of current through a circuit in the indicated direction, in this case, 2 amps. You'll be happy to know if you keep current sources at this level of abstraction, circuit analysis is exceptionally easy. If our load resistor has a value of 20 ohms, an application of Ohm's law demonstrates that the resistor will experience a 40-volt drop, implying that the current source must induce a 40-volt rise to allow 2 amps of current to travel through this 20 ohm resistor. If, however, the load is dramatically increased to 20 mega ohms, another application of Ohm's law demonstrates that the resistor would experience a 40 megavolt drop, which implies that the current source must induce a 40 megavolt rise to allow 2 amps to travel through a 20 mega ohm resistor. 40 megavolts. Can you see the difficulty in purchasing a current source that will push 2 amps through a circuit regardless of applied load? Not going to happen. However, if we suspend our disbelief in physics, sure, it could happen, and an Ohm's law analysis gives us the necessary proof it could. The current divider rule is an especially handy technique when performing circuit analysis using current sources. For reasons I'll explain in later lectures, current sources are often placed in parallel with a large fixed resistor and a variable load resistor. This is a perfect setup for the current divider rule. Incoming current is known, as are the resistor values. Consider a 29 mA current source supplying current to a parallel combination of a fixed 4.7 kilo ohm resistor and a variable load resistor presently set to 240 ohms. If you're up to the challenge, see if you can use the current divider rule to solve for the current through each element. Once you've got this information, see if you can solve for the voltage drop across each element. By all means, pause the lecture and try this on your own. If you're tracking, you should have obtained the following results. The DC current divider rule set up to solve for the current through the fixed resistor is equal to the resistance of the element not of interest, in this case, the variable load resistor, divided by the summation of these resistances, fixed plus load, times the incoming current, in this case 29 milliamperes. Substituting our given values yields current through the fixed resistor to be 1.4 milliamperes. We could use another application of the DC current divider rule to solve for the current through the load resistor. However, I suggest a far more efficient means of doing so, namely Kirchhoff's current law. Given 29 milliamperes of incoming current enters this parallel relationship, and 1.4 milliamperes is diverted through the fixed resistor, an algebraic rearrangement of the Kirchhoff's current law equation for this parallel relationship suggests that current through the load resistor equals incoming current minus current through the fixed resistor. Substituting in our given values yields current through the load resistor to be the remaining 27.6 milliamperes of current. As a means of checking our work, an application of Ohm's law demonstrates the current source must produce a 6.6 volt rise. Voltage across these parallel elements is indeed the same, and what comes in does indeed come out. Let's say the variable load resistor now changes to 690 ohms. See if you can use similar techniques to solve for the current through each element and the voltage drop across each element. By all means, pause the lecture and try this on your own. If you're tracking, you should have obtained the following results. Presented without comment, you should have found 3.7 milliamperes travels through the fixed resistor, and the remaining 25.3 milliamperes travels through the load resistor. An application of Ohm's law demonstrates that the current source must induce an increased 17.4 volt rise. Is it just me, or does circuit analysis with current sources seem suspiciously easy? Do you suspect a trap? Chill out. Relax for once. I know I've hammered you with some detailed lectures before, but this is the one occasion where it really is this simple. If you've got a solid understanding of Ohm's law and can make use of the current divider rule shortcut, analysis incorporating current sources really is this easy. Keep in mind, ideal current sources aren't exclusively limited to just pure parallel circuits. They could be included in basic series circuits or more advanced series parallel circuits. Consider this example of an 18 mA current source placed in series with R1, a 620 ohm resistor, R2, a 240 ohm resistor, and R3, a 470 ohm resistor. This is a totally different circuit than our previous parallel circuits, but well within the reach of those individuals with an understanding of basic series circuit properties and Ohm's law. The most fundamental property of series circuits is that current through elements in series is the same. The current source, being the only active source in our circuit, must therefore induce 18 mA of current through the whole circuit. Source current equals I1, which equals I2, which equals I3, and they all equal 18 mA. See if you can use series circuit properties to solve for the voltage drop across each element, and consider the necessary rise that must be present to induce these voltage drops. By all means, pause the lecture and try this on your own. If you're tracking, you should have obtained the following results. Ohm's law states the voltage drop across an element is equal to the current through it times resistance. V1 equals I1 times R1, which yields 24.8 volts. V2 equals I2 times R2, which yields 4.3 volts. And finally, V3 equals I3 times R3, which yields 8.5 volts. Using Kirchhoff's voltage law, it can be said that the sum of voltage drops equals the rise induced by the current source. Substituting our calculated values, we find that the current source must have induced a 37.6 voltage rise to induce 18 mA of current to travel through this series combination of resistors. See, it really is that easy. And that's the point. A current source is a mathematically pure entity and allows us to make these simplifications. If the circuit you're analyzing includes a current source, you can either whip out Ohm's law or the current divider rule, and the most complicated scenarios will fold just like an origami ballerina. We'll learn in later lectures that one can swap out certain configurations of voltage sources for an equivalent configuration of a current source and make the analysis easier, and the circuit will be none the wiser to the substitution. Additionally, we'll learn in much later lectures that various configurations of power electronics devices, known as transistors, can sometimes be modeled as current sources. For today's lecture, it's just a quick introduction to this entity. As easy as current sources are, they do come with some strings attached. The most important being that current sources cannot violate basic series and parallel properties, nor establish laws like Kirchhoff's voltage law or Kirchhoff's current law. Here are two rules and regulations regarding current sources. Rule 1. Current sources of different magnitudes can never be placed in series with one another. This doesn't make sense. If source 1 pushes 30 mA through the circuit regardless of applied load, and source 2 pushes 50 mA through the same circuit regardless of applied load, this won't work out well because current through elements in series is the same. Last time I checked, 30 doesn't equal 50, nor does 50 equal 30. This being said, current sources of different magnitudes can be placed in parallel with one another. If source 1 pushes 30 mA through the circuit and source 2 pushes an additional 50 mA through the circuit, what's the total current delivered to this circuit? The answer via Kirchhoff's current law is 30 plus 50, or 80 milliamperes. Makes sense. Now here's where reality steps in. What's the voltage across current source 1? What's the voltage across current source 2? Don't think too hard because I hate for your head to explode. If voltage across elements in parallel is the same, this is where we must necessarily make a simplification of our simplification. Rule 2, current sources in parallel add up. There is now a single 80 milliampere current source. If our load resistor is 390 ohms, the voltage across it via Ohm's law would be 31.2 volts. Before we bring this short lecture to a close, let's pause to consider the means of operation and limitations of real-world current sources. As I mentioned at the beginning of this lecture, if you crack open a current source, what you'll find is actually a variable voltage source that continually monitors and maintains output current at some constant value. The means of doing this is via a closed-loop controller, one of the more basic elements of control theory. A closed-loop controller requires two basic inputs. One, some desired set point established by an operator. In this case, output current, which an operator wants to maintain at 80 milliamperes. Two, a means of monitoring the actual output of the system. In this case, an ammeter could be used to measure actual current produced by the source. The controller continually compares the desired set point with the actual output of the system. If there's a difference between the desired output and the actual output, there's an error, and the polarity and magnitude of the error represents by how much the system must increase or decrease its output to achieve the desired set point. Consider the inner workings of the current source supplying 80 milliamperes to a 390 ohm resistor. The desired set point is 80 milliamperes. The actual output is 80 milliamperes. The error is 0 milliamperes, and the adjustable voltage supply continues to supply our previously calculated 31.2 volts, sufficient to push the desired amount of 80 milliamperes through the 390 ohm load resistor. If, however, the load resistor increased to 470 ohms, an application of Ohm's law demonstrates that 31.2 volts would push only roughly 66.4 milliamperes of current through the system. Via the feedback loop, the current source realizes there is an error of 13.6 milliamperes, and because of the sign associated with the summing junction, realizes the set point is higher than the output and must increase its output by an additional 13.6 milliamperes. Via the transfer function, a bit of control theory math I'm skipping over right now, that for this circuit is kind of just like Ohm's law in a nice suit and tie, the adjustable voltage source increases its output to 37.6 volts. At this voltage, current again returns to 80 milliamperes and the error is 0 milliamperes. Does this happen instantly? No. There's some appreciable rise time and there's some overshoot and settling over time. We'll learn in much later lectures all the dirty details and secret tricks of control theory, but for now, consider this most basic of introductions. 2 more quick examples though, and our brief tour will be complete. Let's say the load resistor dramatically drops to 180 ohms. An application of Ohm's law demonstrates the present level of 37.6 volts would push 208.9 milliamperes of current through the system. This is clearly in excess of the desired 80 milliampere set point. The error in this case is 128.9 milliamperes. The error output is telling the voltage source to take a log off that fire. Another application of Ohm's law demonstrates that the voltage source needs to drop to 14.4 volts, and the current source will return to supplying 80 milliamperes, where again the error between the actual output and the desired set point is 0. Finally, let's say the load resistor is dramatically increased to 2 kiloohms. At the present level of 14.4 volts, an application of Ohm's law demonstrates that only 7.2 milliamperes of current travels through the system. This is way below the desired 80 milliampere set point. The error in this case is 72.8 milliamperes. The large amount of error is saying hit the gas and hit it hard. The output voltage rises and rises, but at some point, a real-world current source, in contrast to the mathematically perfect entities we've just discussed, is just going to run out of steam. An application of Ohm's law demonstrates a voltage of 160 volts would be required to push 80 milliamperes of current through the 2 kiloohm resistor. But let's say the adjustable voltage source inside this real-world current source tops out at a maximum of 120 volts. An application of Ohm's law demonstrates that 120 volts supplying a 2 kiloohm resistor delivers only 60 milliamperes of current. There's still a 20 milliampere error between the desired set point and the actual output, but the real world has hard limits that real devices just can't surmount. Long story short, if you're using a benchtop power supply as a current source, know its operational range and simply operate inside that range. Inside the operational range, the current source should push the required amount of current through whatever you throw at it. Outside the operational range, expect to reach some peak performance, followed by a predictable decline. Okay, I think we've delivered a sufficient introduction to the current source. Keep in mind we'll be seeing the current source again in later circuit analysis scenarios, as well as making use of a handy equivalency between current source and voltage source configurations called source conversion. Remember, never place current sources of different magnitudes in series with one another, and current sources in parallel add up. Stay on the right side of Kirchhoff's laws. Believe me, the judgments are swift and the punishments are harsh. In conclusion, this lecture presented the current source and examined circuit analysis scenarios employing DC current sources. Additionally, we discussed the rules regarding current sources in series and parallel. Finally, we presented the inner workings and limitations of real-world current sources. Remember to review these materials as often as you need to really drive it home. Imagine how well that will go if you know what you're doing. Thank you very much for your attention and interest, and we'll see you again during the next lecture of our series. Remember to tell your Lazy Lad partner about this resource. Be sure to check out the Big Bad Tech channel for additional resources and updates.